Welcome to Rivalries. On Saturday, Aston Villa play Liverpool at Anfield. Today, I'm joined by Neil Jones. He's the Liverpool correspondent for football news website Goal. Neil, welcome to All Villa, No Filler.
Cheers, mate. Thanks for having me.
Anytime. I'm a bit worried about this weekend, I've got to say. Liverpool have won 7 games in a row in the league. Firstly, I'll ask you, where has this incredible run come from?
Yeah, I suppose it's a good question because if you'd have asked at the start of the season, if you'd have said Liverpool putting together a run of 7 games, you'd have said, "Oh yeah, that's pretty standard." For Liverpool, they've done it a few times, haven't they? But given the way the first half of the season and probably the first two-thirds of the season really panned out, it did feel like those days were almost gone. And I don't think anyone saw it coming necessarily this run, but you always had it in the back of your mind that maybe if things fall into place, that the side can almost remember who they are and what they can do. I think what's probably helped an awful lot is just having players available and a consistency of selection. They haven't made an awful lot of changes to the starting lineup in that 7 games. They've been able to play key players. Obviously Van Dijk, Alexander-Arnold, Robertson, Alisson, Salah. The midfield's been pretty settled as well with someone like Curtis Jones being in it, and the forwards they've had all the forwards available pretty much for the period. So I think that consistency of selection, I think maybe also a little bit of reaching a bottom point really when if you think back to not so long ago, they were beaten against Manchester City
Mm.
comfortably. They were knocked out of the Champions League very comfortably by Real Madrid, and I think there was probably a bit of a sense that look, things have got pretty bad here. The season's almost dwindling into nothing. There was a moment where you would have thought they might have been where Chelsea are at the moment in the league, bottom half. And I think maybe there's been a response to that the players have almost come out fighting and decided that hey, you know, we might we might have reasons for why we're not doing as well as we expected to this season, but we're not this bad. We need to start showing something. Otherwise, a fair few heads would have been on the chopping block.
Yeah, under Jurgen Klopp, Liverpool have had such an incredible run over the last 7, 8 years. But 2 years ago, Liverpool did have a bit of a dip for one season, and I think that was down to injuries, combination of maybe playing behind closed doors, maybe didn't help either.
Yeah.
But this season, I was quite surprised after you almost came to winning the quadruple last year, just how much it did drop off this year. What's the reason behind that? Why has Liverpool been quite inconsistent?
Yeah, I think there's a few factors at play. I think it'd be hard to nail down one thing. I mean, obviously you could look at Sadio Mane leaving, you could look at and say that's a big factor. Yeah, of course it is, but it's not. It's not the reason you go from quadruple chasing to fifth and sixth in the Premier League.
Mm.
You could look at the energy expended last season, and you think back. I mean, you guys obviously played a part in Aston Villa. We're 15 minutes away from, or 9 minutes away from Liverpool being probably going to be champions. And
Sorry about
I,
that.
no, exactly, yeah. But listen, I think it was an unexpected opportunity that arose that day. I don't think anyone went into that day thinking you were going to get that close anyway. But I think if Liverpool win that league, I think they'd probably go on and win the Champions League. It would have felt. It felt like the season, even though it was an incredible season, it felt like it ended with this deflating sort of experience, missing out on the two biggest trophies. Also, what the experience of the supporters in Paris at the Champions League final. It just felt like,
Mm.
God, so much went into that season, and okay, yeah, you got the FA Cup and the League Cup, but it didn't quite finish the way everyone wanted it to finish on and off the field. And I think when this season started, and there was a couple of poor results to start the season, we get away at Fulham. They obviously then drew with Crystal Palace in the first game, lost at Old Trafford, and I do feel like it almost felt like the club and the players maybe just thought, oh, that's it.
Mm.
That's sort of, we're not going to win the league this season because we've dropped 7 points in the first 3 games or 5 points in the first 3 games. We're not going to do it, and that I think that there was a bit of feeling sorry for themselves. I think there was a feeling that we can't just keep going to the well and getting these 90-point seasons. And
Yeah.
to be honest, it's subsequently proven a little bit. I mean, I speak to my Arsenal colleague a fair bit about this, and he's sort of gone through these emotions and these sort of feelings that I went through in the recent seasons where you just want to be able to draw a game, and you just want to be able
Yeah.
to sort of go to a game and go, oh, it's okay. Like, look, we didn't play well today, and we didn't get the result, but everything is viewed through the prism of you can't draw games. You're going to have
Yeah,
to get 95, 96 points to win the Premier League. And if you don't, Manchester City are there. And I remember him saying that he was watching City on a day when Arsenal weren't playing, and I said, you can't do that. You like as a supporter of these teams, you can't watch Manchester City because it'll break your heart.
yeah,
You will be disappointed. And if you think about that as fans, think about what the players must be thinking as well. If they're
yeah.
trying to go through the motions, they're losing games, they're not at their best. They may be trying to get a few new players into the team. Darwin Nunez, for example, and they're watching City get stronger with Haaland scoring goals. They're watching Arsenal rise up through the league and get into that position. And you're sort of treading water a little bit.
Mm.
I think it took them a long time to get their heads around the fact that it's not going to be your season. You're not going to have another season like last year. You're not going to be in all the finals. You're not going to be going to the final day with the league in sight. And I
Mm.
think it's only recently, probably since sort of March onwards, I think it's only recently that you've seen the team sort of start to remember who they are and remember that, listen, we weren't always brilliant, but we always sort of found a way to win. And that's sort of been a little bit about what Liverpool have been done in the last few weeks. They haven't been brilliant by any means. They were pretty good on Monday night at Leicester, but generally they've been okay. But they've had
Mm.
that winning mentality and that sort of ability to grind out a result and get the win.
God, that is fascinating. I hadn't even really thought about that. Yeah, if you do draw a couple early on in the season, you really must be thinking, well, that's it, because just City will not. They're like the Terminator. They just absolutely will not stop.
Yeah,
God, wow, yeah, that really you can totally make sense. But also something that has been mentioned is about like Liverpool's midfield,
yeah.
maybe aging or not a lot of pace in that central area. Do you think that has been a factor in why Liverpool
I think
maybe haven't performed?
Oh yeah, it's definitely been a factor. I think the attack has been a factor as well, and in a different way. I mean, listen, Liverpool have scored pretty decent amounts of goals. I mean, they've scored 9 this season. They've scored 7 twice, and they've scored 6 in games. They're not short of goals necessarily, but I think with ingratiating a few new players, obviously Diaz came in at the back end of last season and made a big impact. He was missing for a big part of this season. Darwin came in obviously with the idea that they were going to play a little bit of a different way and he was going to have that threat in behind. But what Liverpool lost around that was the pressing from the front and then a little bit of the pressing from behind as well. Um, they made a mistake last summer, Liverpool. They made a big mistake in the transfer market. They wanted to sign a midfielder. They wanted to sign Tchouaméni, who ended up going to Real Madrid. They decided, having not been able to get him, that they weren't going to make any midfield sign. They were going to wait and hope that what they had was going to be enough, and then look to put their eggs in a basket of someone like Jude Bellingham the following year. Obviously that hasn't worked out. But
Mm.
what it left them relying on players who are good players, and there'll be a lot of Liverpool fans who will sort of would roll their eyes at that. Suggests they are good players. They really are good players, but who are there's questions about them somewhere. So either they're too young, they're inconsistent. Maybe someone like Harvey Elliott, you're looking at that and saying he's been asked to do a little bit too much. They're injury prone, like Naby Keita, like Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain. They're too old, like James Milner, who can't play every week. They're getting too old, like Jordan Henderson, for example, who probably needs to be able to be dipped in and out of the side. And then what it does is it puts pressure on the ones that are there. Fabinho, for example, is
Mm.
probably a really good indicator this season of Liverpool's struggles. He's someone who's technically in his peak age. He shouldn't be burnt out. He shouldn't be looking so leggy, but he's been so exposed and he's had to play so much football and he's played so many games that on the knife edge, if you like, over the last sort of 3 or 4 years. He's just looked a little bit shot in at times this season, and Liverpool haven't been able to take him out of the firing line. They have been able to bring someone else in because they're not reliable enough, they're not available enough, they're not fit enough, um, and it has had a big effect. But I do think as well it is important to stress that it's not just a midfield issue. I think it's been a structure of the team issue, and I think potentially the midfield, which was being protected really well by a defence that is fantastic with Virgil van Dijk at the heart of it, and Joel Matip previously. That's been creaking a little bit, but also in front of it when you've got Sadio Mane, Roberto Firmino, and Mo Salah as your forward line, you're getting all the way you can imagine off the ball. It's not quite been there this season with these new players being brought in, and I think that has left the midfield exposed.
Okay. So, off the back of that kind of inconsistency this season, but now that you've won 7 in a row, Villa this weekend, how do you feel going into that game?
Well, I think Liverpool, one thing that's always been retained, even despite Liverpool's problems this season, is the home form. It's been pretty good. They've only lost once at Anfield in the league this season. That was against Leeds. And that was a bit of one of those, again, that was one of those games that you don't expect from Liverpool because they haven't had them really in recent years, but you can get in any season. I mean, Manchester City lost at home to Brentford. Liverpool can lose at home to Leeds. Generally, the home form has been good. They've been able to save their best. I mean, you think they've beaten Manchester City. They've obviously battered Manchester United 7. They've beaten Napoli in the Champions League. Who went and won Serie A. So they've been able to pull out these performances at Anfield. So you would always have backed them in whatever form they were in. I think the form that they're in recently, the encouragement comes, I think, from the clean sheets. I think that's 3 in a row in the league. They look a little bit more determined to play that way and to not, give up the chances which we saw in the early part of the season. I think there's a lot of respect for what Villa have done. I think Liverpool went there on Boxing Day to Villa Park, and it was obviously one of Emery's early games, or not long into his tenure with the World Cup, that haven't been in the middle. And to watch Villa now compared to what Villa were then, I think is speaks volumes to the work that he's done. So I think there's a lot of respect for what he's done, the progress that the team has made. But I think there'll be a confidence that Liverpool, on the run that they're in, and knowing that if they were to win their last 2 games, there's a fair chance that they can put some real pressure on Newcastle and Manchester United in that race for the top 4. I think Liverpool will fancy themselves to win the last 2 games, Villa at home and Southampton away.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? Knowing that just Liverpool creeping up on those Champions League places, Newcastle having a loss and a draw, United inconsistent. I just sort of feel like, oh, this the exact wrong times we're playing Liverpool away. And to be honest, when we played Liverpool in December, Liverpool 3-1 at Villa Park, and what happened in that game was that Villa's high line kept getting caught out over and over and over again, which is interesting because Villa's high line in recent games, particularly at home, we've been like catching teams offside constantly. And this seems to be this sense with pundits as well that eventually will get found out. But the only team that seems to have done that this season, other than maybe Leicester, was Liverpool. So I am slightly worried maybe this weekend, Villa go to Anfield with a high line. Do you think we could be asking for a bit of trouble?
Possibly, and Liverpool know how that feels. I think Liverpool's high line has been the subject of much debate during the Klopp era. I remember when the first season, obviously, when VAR came in the Premier League was I think it was the year Liverpool won the Premier League title. And I remember the first few weeks of the season, it just being discussed. Oh, Liverpool are playing with this new high line. And I remember asking Jurgen about it and saying, well, are you worried about it? And he said, no. He said, because we're playing to the rules. He said, we know that, if we do what we're supposed to do, it doesn't matter if teams are in behind us 5 times and we, the flag goes up. That's fine. VAR will sort that out. And I think you're right in saying that obviously Liverpool had some success. They didn't actually really score from that high line, did they? They missed some chances. I mean, I remember Salah going through it, I think at the Holt end. I can remember Darwin Nunez missing a chance. I think the first 2 goals came from set pieces, sort of, that got played back in, didn't they? I think Van Dijk scored, maybe Salah as well. But that was quite early in Emery's reign, and it does feel like he's probably got to grips with it, and they are a lot more drilled now. They've got a more settled side. Obviously, he's brought in the guy at left back who's been a pretty good signing, Moreno, hasn't he? Looks like he's made a big difference. Obviously, there's a lot more work been done on that. So it doesn't surprise me that the level of coach that Emery is, that it took him maybe a few weeks to get that in position. But now, once he did, you can see that Villa are a very well-drilled side. And Liverpool have played against Emery sides in the past. They lost the Europa League final against his Sevilla. They played against the Villarreal side of his last season in the Champions League semi-finals. And at half-time in the second leg, you were thinking Liverpool were going out. Villarreal were 2-0 up. The tie was level on aggregate. And I've not seen a team get into Liverpool as thoroughly as Villarreal did that night for 45 minutes. So there will be no idea that, it'll be an easy game. Jurgen Klopp's respect for Unai Emery is huge, and so it should be. So I think there will be. It might be one of those games that we see an awful lot of condensation almost in the middle of the pitch, because Liverpool like to push up. Liverpool like to play that way and squeeze the game. If Villa are doing the same, then yeah, you could be seeing a few Ollie Watkins running clean through. You could be seeing Mo Salah running clean through a few times with some late linesman's flags and that kind of thing. But I don't think. I think Liverpool will always look to exploit any team's weakness, but I don't think it's one of them where they think, "Oh, lovely, Villa play a high line. That'll be all we do." It'll just be a bit of a knife edge game. And you saw, I mean, just to give an example of the Leicester game on Monday, you saw Liverpool's first goal comes from the goalkeeper playing the ball down the centre of the pitch, and Luis Diaz just about being onside, making something of it, and they end up scoring from it. So it's always been a way of Liverpool playing. It's not necessarily against just high lines. They always are looking for that space in behind if they can get it.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how much you see Villa week to week, but is there anyone that that gives you cause for concern this weekend from the Villa team? And is there a way that teams seem to be hurting Liverpool at all recently?
Yeah, I suppose. Well, Watkins is the one who's got a great record against Liverpool, hasn't he? Going back to that remarkable 7-2 game. What was that? Nearly 3 years ago now. Time flies. I remember sitting in an empty Villa Park, or a virtually empty Villa Park, watching that unfold. I think it was the same day Manchester United had lost 6 to Tottenham, and I remember sort of arriving thinking, "Wow, what a result that is," and then going home thinking something strange was in the air that day. But Watkins is one. He's always scores against Liverpool. Or it feels like he always scores. I think he scored in the Boxing Day game, didn't he? I think he got the goal back that day. And he's been in good form. The game I watched of Villa recently was Newcastle at home, and they were unplayable that day. Villa, they won 3-0. I think they could have won 6 or 7. And Watkins was the main reason for that. I thought he was so dangerous. His touch, he looked just full of confidence. I don't know if he scored since then, or maybe he's tailed off a little bit in his form, but goal scoring form. But I think he'll be the one to watch. The player I really like in Villa is Jacob Ramsey, and I've been a huge fan of his since he came through. And obviously I was at Villa when they won the Youth Cup against Liverpool, and his brother was playing. Obviously, I think came off the bench, and I know that they were speaking about what a great crop of players Villa had with Chuck Waker and a few others. Philogene, who is he at Cardiff? Has he gone to Cardiff? Philogene? Yeah. They were talking about this great crop, but they were all basically saying, yeah, but Jacob Ramsey's like sort of, he's a level above, and I love the way he plays. I love how direct he is and how sort of dangerous he is in the game. So I think he's one. I think Liverpool I think they're quite admiring of him, in terms of, I'm not saying that they're gonna make a bid, but I think if he was ever to come available, I think Liverpool would want to be asking questions about him. So I think those two are a big threat. They've both got goals in them. They've both got sort of the ability to break the lines and get into those goal scoring positions as well. So I think if you were looking at Liverpool, where would Liverpool's weakness be? We're all talking about Trent Alexander-Arnold going into midfield and doing this sort of hybrid role. It means there's no right back for certain periods of the game. And if you've got, a flying fullback like Moreno, you've got a player who can drift into those spaces like Ramsey, and you've got a centre forward who can, threaten him behind like Watkins, then you've got the tools. If you can exploit it, you can do pretty well.
Moreno going in behind, because Moreno loves to push forward right up to the top of the pitch. He's been a revelation really at Villa, certainly for a audience in this country, I guess, that didn't know him so well in La Liga. But with Liverpool itself, like who are Liverpool's key men at the moment? Where are the threats coming from with their side?
Yeah, I think I've just mentioned him really. I think Trent Alexander-Arnold is the key man at the moment with Liverpool. He's really looked a little bit reinvigorated by this change in role, and it's easy to say that, isn't it? When someone changes role, you sort of you may be backfilling. You say, "Oh, look at that! He's sort of his chest pumped out and his shoulders are a bit taller and stuff." But has been the case. I think he's had a lot of criticism, and some of it fair, some of it unfair down the years for his defending. I think A, he could be a better defender in individual moments, but B, he's also doing what the manager's asked him to do in other moments. So when people say, "Oh, he's out of position," I don't think they're right. That actually he's in the right position, but Liverpool haven't obviously retained the ball, or they haven't sort of covered for him. But in this new role, what he gives Liverpool is he gives a killer pass from the middle of the pitch, which they haven't always had. They've had a little bit of it with Thiago when he's played, but he's been in and out. Generally, Liverpool's midfield has been very functional. It's been very hard work and sort of covers grounds, covers spaces, keeps the pressure on by winning second balls and things like that. Now Liverpool have that, but they also have someone who can just put a pass in behind or a pass, diagonally into someone's stride. They've got that sort of creativity as well in that position. And it really is making a difference. You can see someone like Mo Salah, for example, someone like Luis Diaz, with Darwin Nunez when he plays, they know that they can make those runs constantly, and the chances are the ball will find its way in. So he's been a massive part. I think the other player as well, I would single out. Salah's an obvious one because he keeps scoring, but Cody Gakpo playing, obviously signed in January, playing in that sort of number 9 position. I think he's been a bit of a revelation for Liverpool. I was one of those people who sort of thought, I'm not sure why. I didn't see it really. He didn't look like the natural sort of player, but he'd hold up play, his ability to sort of get the ball, hold players off turn, and then drive at defences is pretty good. He wins a lot of free kicks doing that. He obviously creates a lot of chances or at least opportunities to create chances by doing it. And I think having him in that position, as opposed to maybe someone like Jota, who's a little bit looser in his touch, a little bit more around the penalty area, Nunez, who's a little bit more wants the ball in behind into space to run onto, having that player a little bit like Firmino, who can come and hold the ball up, link the play, and get Diaz, get Salah, get whoever into the game, has been a big difference for Liverpool. And I think Gakpo, I think a lot of fans are seeing a lot of promise in him. He had a tough start, coming to a tough situation with the team, struggling, but he's made a big difference since he's got his feet under him.
Yeah, interesting to hear that. I was the same. I wasn't massively convinced. He obviously scored quite a few good goals at the World Cup, but I wasn't sure. But seeing him at Liverpool has been like, oh, never doubt Jurgen Klopp in his nose, doesn't he?
That's it. With attackers, Liverpool, you sort of have to go by your hit rate, don't you? And you look at Liverpool's attacking signings under Jurgen Klopp, and you've got Mane, you've got Salah, you've got Firmino, obviously came just before, but you've got Diaz, obviously Jota. They're a pretty good strike rate to go off. You can trust them, and I think I wrote that at the time. I think I wrote, look, I've got my doubts, but to be honest, I should know better. Let's trust the process, if you want to call it that. And it looks like Gakpo is going to be another hit.
Yeah, it looks like that. And before we sort of round up, with Aston Villa, kind of the turnaround that has happened since October, it's come as a real shock to Villa fans, I think, seeing just how much better we are. A shock that we're even competing for Europe. I guess, kind of as a reporter yourself and somebody who doesn't always cover Villa, but do you what do you make of Aston Villa's turnaround since October? Has it come as a bit of a surprise? And what sort of trajectory did Villa look like they might be on?
Yeah, I think it definitely comes as a surprise. I mean, there was a literal surprise, I think, when I looked at the league table one day and they were above Liverpool, and I was like, wow, like they're going well. I knew they were on an up curve, but I didn't know they were sort of putting themselves in the European picture. I think, obviously, from a Liverpool perspective, we've got the Steven Gerrard angle. So a lot of people took a lot of interest in Villa, I think, for the time that Gerrard was at the club. I think there was a general feeling that Gerrard was a little bit unlucky with certain things. Obviously, with, for example, Diego Carlos getting injured, his big sort of decision really, wasn't it? Or the big thing that probably defines him is the Tyrone Mings sort of, he wanted rid of him, didn't he? And he wanted to change things. He got a bit unlucky with the guy he signed to replace him. Obviously, was missing for pretty much the entirety of his reign. But also there was an unavoidable feeling that he's got to be getting more out of this group of players. They were 17th, I think, when he left. So I think a lot of people saw Villa, middle of the table, 10th, 11th, 12th, maybe. I think what Emery's done, and I think what's been most impressive from my perspective, is he's not really done it by going, right, we need 7 new players. We need to, these players are not good enough. We need to change everything. We need to get rid of that, and that. He's done it by, he's bought a left back. And to be honest, he wouldn't have even said when he bought a left back, well, that's the obvious area they need. I mean, they spent a lot of money on Luca Dean to play there. Obviously, whatever you think of Luca Dean, but it wasn't the sort of thing that Villa just had a new left back that transformed them. No one thought that. So what he's done is he's obviously brought back in people like Mings. He's brought back in or into form, John McGinn, by the sounds of it. Buendia seems like he's done a lot better. Watkins has obviously done better. So I think that's the most impressive thing, that he's done it old school, if you like. He's done it through management and coaching, and through getting them organised. And I probably would say he's probably got them to around where the group of players that Villa have got probably should be, I would say. But I think how quickly he's done it and how effectively he's done it, I think is the most impressive thing.
Yeah, it's been an absolutely terrible 15 years of Villa, really, of a massive underachievement of kind of where historically we feel we should be. And to see Emery come in and just turn it around this quickly has been, I think we're all just in true elation at the moment. There's a real sense of positivity around Villa. I think that something's happening, and I feel like it's a feeling we've not had for quite a long time. So yeah. But, this weekend, big game coming up. Got to ask you, score prediction. Which way do you think it will go?
I think Liverpool will win. I know, and I realise I'm on a Villa podcast, and that'll go down as it goes down. But I think it'll be a narrow one. I can't see this being a game where Liverpool put it to bed, or sort of have this comfortable afternoon. I think last year's game was 1-0. It was settled by a penalty. That was one of Gerrard's early games. I wouldn't be at all surprised if it was another 1-0 or a 2-1, something like that. I think it'll be the odd goal that'll do it. But I think Liverpool will come out on top. I think they've just got that. They've got that momentum that they've needed. They've got that, and they've got that character as well, obviously, of just trying to get into those top four places. I still think that there's probably a fair chance that they fall short, but they definitely will if they don't win on Saturday. So I think that will just tip the balance their favour.
Yeah, I veer towards thinking that as well. I think Villa will score, but we've lost the last two away games at United and Wolves 1-0. So I just think with your momentum, or Liverpool's momentum at the moment, that you might just edge this one. But
I should also point out it's going to be obviously a pretty great atmosphere. Last home game of the season for Liverpool, but Roberto Firmino's last game as a Liverpool player, there'll be a huge bit of emotion around it as well. You'll hear that song. That'll be, anyone who's going to the game from a Villa perspective will leave with that Bobby Firmino song ringing in their ears, I'm sure, because that'll be going on for pretty much the whole 90 minutes. So I just feel like, I think that might also create a bit of an atmosphere around the Saturday 3:00 that maybe wouldn't always be there. That might make it a little bit more in Liverpool's favour.
Yeah, God, I hadn't even considered that factor. Firmino oddly has been linked with Villa a few times. I've chatted to a few Villa fans about, so I don't know what the veracity of that would be, but I'd take him.
You'd love him. You'd absolutely love him.
What I'm sure every Liverpool fan who is watching this knows where they can find you online and all that, but just in case there are any who perhaps don't, where can we find your work online?
Yeah, so obviously mainly on Goal. If you go there and look at the Liverpool page, you'll find most of my stuff. Twitter, Neil Jones Goal. Instagram, the same. Facebook as well. Quite handy. Quite uniform across there. So yeah, make sure you check those out.
Brilliant. Well, it's been great to meet you, Neil, and thanks so much for coming on.
No problem. Thanks a lot for having me.